You are listening to the Soul Connection Duo podcast, a podcast that explores spirituality, shares vulnerable stories, brings awareness to different healing modalities, and offers hope to individuals who may be grieving a loss. I'm Alexa Mathis.
And I'm Sydney Ham, and we are your hosts, also known as the Soul Connection Duo. Get ready to connect to your soul and start healing within.
Today our guest is Ellie Garnham. Ellie is a psychic quantum healer and founded the iHEAL technique, which is an evolved and expanded method of traditional quantum healing and past life regression. She teaches this technique to others so they can certify to become iHEAL quantum healers just like her. Ultimately, her role on Earth is to anchor in higher frequencies, particularly that of the golden ray, which is the highest vibration of creation next to Source and where Elohim resides. She is very connected to them in a way and is still learning, but nevertheless working with them every day to raise the consciousness of the planet, thus creating new Earth. On a day-to-day basis, she activates people's spiritual psychic gifts by acting as a bridge and connecting them to their higher selves and their own spirit guides. We're so excited to have you here today, Ellie. Thank you for joining us and welcome to the Soul Connection Duo podcast.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you to introduction as well.
Yes, thank you, Ellie. I think when both of us were reading your intro previous to this recording, we were just like, wow, we have so much to learn today. So thank you again for being here. Obviously you have an accent. Do you mind sharing with us where you're tuning in from today?
Of course. So I'm originally from England, but I moved to Australia 10 years ago now. So I feel like I'm getting a bit of an Aussie twang, but I'm trying very hard to not to have that.
Yeah. Yes, amazing. Well, do you mind just diving right into it? I know we have lots to talk about and learn today. So just a little bit about the work that you do and yeah, just explain it all to us. We're so excited to learn.
Well, beautiful. So thank you so much for having me on your podcast. I'm really excited to be here. I'm an iHEAL quantum healer, and iHEAL is a technique that I created that's similar to the Dolores Cannon method of quantum healing hypnosis therapy. And it really helps to take you on that special journey into your past lives and connects you to your higher self and soul group. So I essentially act as a bridge and facilitate those sessions, connecting you with your own soul group, including galactic beings, and activating your own psychic gifts so you can essentially take back your power and fully embody your highest self. So ultimately, my purpose is to anchor in higher unity consciousness into Earth. And I do this by empowering and igniting your own light and allowing it to spread like wildfire within you, so you can fully awaken within yourself and others around you too. So it's causing that ripple effect out into the world, thus creating a new Earth. So I have strong connections to the Elohim, as you've just mentioned, and they reside within the golden ray of consciousness. It's like the 12th ray of consciousness. So if you imagine different light rays, and the golden ray is the highest ray of consciousness next to Source itself. So it's a really powerful vibration, very angelic, and the Elohim are what we would call humanity's original seeders, and they've been gently watching over us and guiding humans ever since. Now, my own soul group, however, are the Lyrans and Andromedans, but I've many different galactic beings working with me. I mean, I'm technically older than the Milky Way itself, so I've picked up many acquaintances out there over the years. I'm also a twin flame, and I've met him many times now in my dream state, but not yet in the physical. And I'm really glad about that as well, because if you or any of your listeners are a twin flame, you'll know how difficult that journey can be, especially if you're in the runner and chaser stage. So thankfully, him and I have an agreement to energetically connect and experience these stages in the etheric realm before coming together in the physical, so that we can avoid experiencing those typical stages together. as our mission was deemed quite important, so not to allow for that to consume us in the meantime. Now, just on the subject of twin flames, for anyone that's not familiar with that term, a twin flame is a starseed whose soul has literally split into two, with one usually incarnated in the physical and the other acting as a spirit guide. So this is only on Earth realm, one would incarnate either or. So off-world, always together, or always find a way of coming together through different incarnations, no matter whereabouts they are in the cosmos. So on Earth, however, the two twin flames that incarnate in the physical form are very, very rare. So I believe that there are around 144,000 twin flames that have incarnated together at this time. And if you're one of the few that continuously see 144, that's a huge indicator that you are yourself a twin flame. Mm-hmm. So that the love that they anchor in together, that's what helps to rapidly ascend Mother Earth into higher consciousness. Hence, the powers that used to be, I'll say, would do everything in their power to prevent the twin flames from ever coming into union. So if you know that you are a twin flame, and a true twin flame at that, know that you are a very rare soul, and one that is needed more than ever before here on the planet. So do the inner work, master the unconditional love. So much harder than it is in the physical, but master that unconditional love within yourself as an individual, so that you and your twin can come together in unison sooner rather than later. I can share with you some insight actually into my own sort of twin flame journey together, I guess, or rather our first incarnation together in the Lyra constellation. It's directly connected to the Orion Wars and what's effectively happening now on Earth, currently with the reptilians and Dracos, etc. If you want me to go into that.
Sure. Yeah, we haven't actually had any guests on talk about twin flames, or I mean, some of them have talked about kind of their past lives or things like that might relate here a little bit, but we'd love to hear more about that.
Wow. Okay. So I originate in the Lyra constellation as a lion being. That was my first incarnation, and it was a very simple incarnation. I made headdresses. It was very, very a naive lifetime, very simple, no enemies, no defense systems, but fully open and vulnerable. And we existed amongst dozens of different races and beings, that we were all coexisting in peace on our planet, which was, in human words, it's called Avalon, but that's not the correct name for it. It's something that just can't be pronounced through tongue. So over time, our planet was met by the Dracos, or Archons, as some people describe them, and they were kicked out of another universe by the Blue Avians and sent into ours. And they came to Lyra and Vega and began to slowly manipulate the people there, and they offered technology, and after a few lifetimes here, they managed to create a war between Vega and Lyra. And Vega was more service to self, and Lyra being more service to others. So thus duality was then created. Now, at that time, my twin was a pilot for a ship, and he caught on to what was about to happen, and he quickly grabbed myself and our small community and took us off planet. Now, by this time, the Archons had successfully taken over Avalon and did what they set out to do, which was to destroy our planet. And so if you imagine watching from your own ship as you see your home planet being destroyed, the trauma that comes with that is next level. And subconsciously in this life, I have never felt that I've belonged here, and it's because I'm still reeling from my own home planet being destroyed. So it's a distant sadness of not belonging anywhere that has lingered. So back on the ship, in that lifetime, we did escape and we headed for the Pleiades star system, but our ship was chased by the Archons and ended up in the constellation of Cassiopeia, which is what we can call like a halfway station, or Switzerland. So it's like a neutral stopping place. Now, it was here that my twin and I were pulled apart, And for several lifetimes, he experienced elsewhere, and I came to the Andromedan constellation. My skin began to change after hundreds of incarnations here, and my body evolved and took a new form. And then before long, the Orion Wars erupted, and this was caused from what had happened to Vega and Lyra. So it spread out into the Orion constellation, and I became part of an elite resistance group known as the Black League, fighting for our freedoms undercover, which is why in my present life I've always been in warrior mode. I'm an Aries moon, so that says it all. If you know anything about astrology, always ready. And so during the Orion Wars, I eventually crossed paths with my twin flame, and we instantly remembered our love. And as higher beings, we remember our previous lives, unlike Earth, where we are born with this amnesia and having to relearn everything all over again. So from this point on, incarnation after incarnation, we've been inseparable. And in this current life, we will come into union once we're both fully balanced within our own divine feminine and divine masculine energies. I did spy on him at Christmas time last year. I tuned in, which is not something that you should really do, because it should be about working on yourself. But, you know, I am human. And so, yeah, I did spy on him last Christmas, and he wasn't doing so well. He'd moved back to the UK. He originally from the UK, moved to Australia like myself. It's like a mirrored life. But he kind of surrendered to COVID and all that was happening in the world. So eventually has moved back to the UK. Hopefully he'll be coming back to Australia sometime soon, though. That would be nice.
Definitely.
Now, this galactic war that has been plaguing the cosmos, it's still going on today. And the Orion Wars may have technically ended, but the karma of it is still being played out on Earth. And you still have this former regressive race trying to battle for dominion. And they're clutching at straws, essentially, grasping onto whatever power they have left, but it's inevitably ending now, and Earth is shifting and has been shifting into higher consciousness for some time, and more and more starseeds with far less of their own karma are being born into the world. The more energetically clearer you are, the more light that you can anchor in from a young age. And that's why more and more children are being labeled as ADHD and being on that autism spectrum, etc., because they're just far more that right brain creatives that are being born into the world, rather than that left brain analytical or easily controllable children being born. So the old system is falling apart, and the more that we individually do to awaken our own power within, the more that we can do collectively to rapidly ascend Earth further. But yeah, it all starts from within. I can actually recommend a book by Larissa Royale called The Prism of Lyra, and it will help you to fully understand the context of the Orion Wars and our closest galactic cousins that are working with us at this time. When I discovered I was part of the Black League, I didn't know who I was really until I read that book, because it's one thing to be shown something in your own meditation or in past life regression, but it's another to then read that information and correlate it to what you've been shown. So yeah, it was pretty mind-blowing to say the least. And the book has sparked so many downloads and activations of remembrance within, so I do highly recommend it. And I have no connection to Larissa. I've got no idea who she is, so not like in any way, but it definitely helped me to connect the dots, so I do recommend.
Cool. That, yeah, really sounds like it would like just validate your own experiences through like your own meditations and past life regressions. And I guess I just want to touch on one thing before we get too far into it, is like how you said we have an amnesia when we come to this planet, and we maybe don't have that same experience with other existences or other forms of existence. I find it really interesting always to kind of go back to how did this start for you? Was it through past life regression that you kind of started to find all of this information out?
Definitely, yeah. So I did have recurring dreams, a few of them when I was younger, and I'll touch on that later as well. But ultimately, it was moving to Australia and experiencing my own past life regression that opened this door and activated that gift of remembrance of my dreams. And all of my other abilities started to come online thick and fast. So it was all through past life regression. And in fact, my very first session that I had was with a friend, and she's now a friend of mine. And I had this trauma in my stomach. I had this gut disease that had affected me for a very, very long time. And I was in and out of hospitals, and there was no sort of getting to the root cause of the issue. It was just a lot of medication to disguise it, to hide those symptoms. And it got to a point that when I arrived in Australia, things started to become so severe that I was stopping myself from eating because I was so scared of the pain afterwards. And so I thought to seek alternative help. And I was always connected into the supernatural, but I never thought that I was one of those people, And anyway, I found quantum healing hypnosis, and I went to this woman, and it was I was literally only under for a few minutes, because at that time my thoughts, my ego was so strong, like I had so many blocks up, but it was enough to activate this journey, activate this divine remembrance of who I am, and help me to become who I essentially came here to be. And in that session I realized that energy had been causing this physical pain and holding on to this trauma. And because I was ready to overcome that lesson, I was ready to let it go. And in that one session, it had completely cleared, and it's never come back again. So yeah, it just ignited this whole journey for me, which is why I believe in it so much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's crazy how healing this energy work and all these other things can be. And there's so much out there. Like Lex was saying, we haven't had anyone on here to kind of talk about this, which is, I think I've learned, you've only been chatting for maybe about 10 minutes, and I'm just like, oh my goodness, like this is so cool. And yeah, I just never heard about it. So yeah, it's amazing.
It's so powerful, so with the quantum healing, it activated the remembrance of my dreams. So every night for years now, I remember my dreams, and sometimes they can be exhausting.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of it is to do with how I'm feeling in the moment and what emotions and energies I need to clear. But it is definitely the most powerful ability that has been awakened within me. And through the dream state, I've healed family rifts. I've literally healed generational trauma. My own sort of family lineage has been healed, and issues within my dreams of, or rather, the family rifts that I've had, there's been no healing that's needed in the physical state, because it's all been healed in the dream state energetically. And so when we've come together in the physical, it's like nothing's ever happened. It's just so powerful. Each year as well, since this huge sort of global awakening, I'll say, has began, I've prophesied global outcomes as well each year, which has been pretty interesting, to say the least. And I'll go into that. So in 2020, and now my dreams are quite hilarious as well. I'm a Leo rising and a Leo sun sign, so I'm dramatic, to say the least. And so in 2020, I dreamt of being chased by doctors trying to inject me. Now, I didn't understand that at the time, but in 2021, that became pretty evident, that it was my dream prophesizing of what was to come. And last year I dreamt of being surrounded by zombies, which represented to me the the unawakened or yet to be awakened, and the people that have been fed the propaganda and continuing to buy into that agenda, which is, you know, it's two sides of the same coin. You know, they've got their own journey to go on, and at the same time that they're doing that, it's helping those starseeds to awaken even further. So now, a few months ago, actually, I dreamt, and this hasn't happened yet, but honestly, I feel it's on the way. Not to create panic within anyone, but I envisioned a fake end of the world scenario where the Earth was havocked by some kind of natural disaster with volcanoes erupting, only to find out that the world was fine. It was just drones. Now, what is that movie? Spider-Man with Jake Gyllenhaal in, where he creates this scene of monsters killing people, and then he goes in and he acts like the savior. So that was all created by using drones, and that's what I dreamt of as well. Now it might not be as dramatic as my dream, but it's safe to say that we will no doubt experience something along these lines, and it needs to happen to really sort of surrender and allow Earth to rapidly shift as well. So the good news though is that, like my dream, the people quickly realized it was fake and it was over sooner rather than later. So I do believe that sort of truth is coming to light though, and yeah, it'll end well.
That's good to hear. That's reassuring for sure, because I know there's been a lot of like tough times for a lot of people these last couple of years, and but it also is really cool. Like we see that same thing too with the ascension of the planet and more people coming into this knowing that things are shifting, and that we're going somewhere higher than we are right now. So
definitely. And just on that as well, I'm always careful of the people that are saying it's coming, you know, good things are coming, because ultimately it doesn't matter what side of the coin you're on. If you're even on the coin, you're still playing into this agenda. You know, you're either for or against, which is creating more sort of duality within yourself. And when someone says to you, relax, good things are coming, you don't need to do anything, you're essentially disempowering yourself, because you're putting that you're relying on someone else to act as your own savior, but it all comes from within. So I'm always conscious of people that say, oh, med beds are coming, you know, so and so's coming to save us. Like, no, do the inner work, like do the inner work yourself, and you know that will create that ripple effect. Your other people will be inspired and motivated because they'll see what you are doing, and how good it's working for you, and then it will make them want to, you know, shift and change within themselves as well. So
I think that's been huge in like our own learning and growing through all of the different things and the different people that we've been talking to. It's like, set that example and do whatever you feel you need to do, right? Like actually empower yourself to make the moves and really follow what your intuition is telling you, rather than, like you say, waiting for somebody or something to come make it happen for you.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting because in my dreams as well, I've unearthed hidden energies, I guess, or energies that have been trapped all over the world. And I've been involved in rescuing children from underground as well. And there are 3 lifetimes in particular that I would like to share with you that are connected into what's going on with the world. And they tie in quite nicely together. So one of the lifetimes I connected in my dreams was actually my brother was on holiday at the same time. He was in South America, and I wasn't actually aware of that at the time until I called him, which was super cool, because it was like I needed his energy physically there for me to activate the divine remembrance of that lifetime and its importance to a block that I had to heal to activate a new sort of level of ascension within myself. So in my dream, and I use the term dream lightly because it insinuates that it's literally just a figment of the imagination. But that's only because we've been programmed and conditioned to think a certain way, so we don't realize how powerful we actually are in this space, and what we can do when we're in this state. So anyway, in my dream, I was in ancient Maya, and I walked into this serpent temple, and I immediately thought, oh, this isn't my territory. I need to get out of this room. I shouldn't be here. And as I walked out, I looked up into the sky and I connected with the sun god. And now I want to say the sun god called Ajor or Ajor. It's Ajaw, the sun god that name's pronounced or spelled. Now, all of these different symbols started to be spelled out in the sky, and I couldn't make sense of them first because I need the idiot's guide to everything. Like my 3D self very much just needs things in plain English. But I remember I was guided to go into the serpent room as there was hidden energy that needed to be released so that the earth could heal and to further ascend. I was advised that in that lifetime in ancient Maya, I was a high up priest who sent the people into a new dimension, hence where we've got this sudden disappearance of the Mayans that no one can sort of understand, or they can only theorize what happened. But it was my own power and ability to connect with the gods at that time that sent people into this realm. Now, subconsciously, though, I had the belief that I had caused harm to the people. And it was because of this such gift of mine that caused this huge flash and then the disappearance. So I thought that I had wiped them out. I thought that I had killed them. I didn't realize that I sent them into a different realm. And I actually discovered a few weeks ago that was within the Pleiades star system as well. So anyway, in my current life, I'd been holding back on using my abilities to the full because I was fearful that I'd cause harm to another. Now, in my line of work, I can't hold myself back. So I had to get that belief cleared as soon as I'd realized that it was coming to the service to be cleared. And now I don't hold back at all. I fully trust my power, and I use it to turn up the dial and explode the potential of another as well. So now, by the way, as I mentioned, my ability to remember my dreams was fully activated in past life regression. But as I mentioned earlier, I did have some recurring dreams when I was a child and growing up, and one of which I'll speak about now because it's connected into, and this is quite a intense topic, but it's connected into child sex trafficking and something that I'm strongly called to bring light to. So when I was young, I used to dream that my brother and I, and my brother in this lifetime, we were trapped underground in this huge facility. It was made of concrete. I can remember it now, like the doors, they were like these circle doors that you had to, I couldn't open it as a child. Like it would need a machine to open it. It was really cold, and I was wearing this long sort of white nightie, or like I'm not sure what you call it in Canada, but they're like nightgowns, I guess. But I was no older than 12 and my brother was about 7. And I remember we were frantically trying to escape before it blew up. We knew that wherever we were underground, it was about to blow up. So we had minutes to escape. And I don't actually believe we did, because I always woke up at the same time. And every time it was when I felt this huge explosion. So a few months ago, I tapped into this as it kept coming to my awareness again. And I realized that my brother and I were once victims of that child sex trafficking agenda. Now, this is rife. It's been happening all over the planet for a millennia. Like it's nothing new, and it actually happens on other planets as well. It's traumatic, it's horrible, but it's really plagued the cosmos for thousands and thousands of years. And one of the reasons I chose to incarnate at this time was to bring light to this and to awaken people to the truth of what's been going on. So this past life was activated through my dreams, so I could begin learning more about my own experiences, so that I could begin bringing truth to this agenda and what's been going on. So I can literally talk about this topic all day. And like last year, I energetically, I was in meditation, and I went into work in Russia, actually, funnily enough, to get these children out. But most of them had unfortunately suffered too much and had passed. So I was, in my mind, I was just seeing thousands and thousands of small coffins lined up. But the team I was working with, we were all undercover, but one of them was actually, you could say, the bad guy, and actually killed most of the team. So yeah, as I said, I could go on forever, but there's another lifetime that's actually connected to that, to what's happening as a whole on the planet, because the child trafficking is just a part of this whole bigger agenda that's been playing out. But it is a major sort of whoopsie lifetime as well, and it's something that I've carried guilt with, and again, another reason why I've chosen to incarnate as well. So this past life, it came through when I was pretty unwell earlier on in the year. I was really tired. I just felt super depressed, like a hopelessness feeling. And I knew that's not how I would usually feel, like to be completely have just given up on hope. I had to tune in, but I was too physically exhausted to do so through my own sort of regressions and meditations. So of course, in the dream state, that's where everything came through. Now, in my dreams, I was being sick and I was purging all of this black goo. And I woke up and I decided I had to go into meditation and find out what was going on. So yeah, I tuned in to a lifetime millions and millions of years ago in a galaxy far, far away. I mean, it was, but it is pretty much like Star Wars. But yeah, I was a scientist. I was creating ways of evolving the people and bettering the planet, of where I was at that time. I wasn't human. And somehow I founded a form of energy that I had alchemized and turned into matter. And it helps to bring the people into a higher state of being. But it was somehow stolen by a regressive race, so by the Archons or the Dracos, and manipulated into a dark energy known as the black goo. And in other words, that's artificial intelligence. Okay, so at the time of receiving this information, I was, as I said, super unwell. And it's because I had unintentionally called in this substance thinking that it was in its purest form when I was working with it and that it would help me to feel better. But because it had been manipulated into that black goo, it had actually caused me to regress and become physically ill. So it was no coincidence that I had called in that, though, because I had a client for a past life regression a week later when I was feeling better. And the client, when we went into the regression, she discovered that she was a Mitra being and that they had become a regressive race. Now, at that time, they weren't a regressive race. She herself was a scientist, but she witnessed the end of her world before it was taken over by this same sort of artificial intelligence. And it had been poisoning not just the people on her planet, but all over the cosmos as well. So it had been infecting, well, it's currently infecting Earth like a disease. It's everywhere, but it's mainly coming through in the forms of virtual reality and new technologies. So anyone telling you that it's a good idea to get microchipped, because it saves you having to carry around a wallet, stay away. My advice is to stay well away. But you see how connecting into the past self, connecting into your past lives, it helps to activate your power here in the present. Outside of Earth, time isn't linear. So you can have the past, present, and future all occurring at the same time. And there are parts of you existing simultaneously everywhere across time and space. And you'll call on parts of yourself from time to time to help you in the here and now. And that's where our spirit guides come from. They aren't external beings working with us. They are us. Your spirit guides are you. They are you from different lifetimes, different star systems and different planets, different realms. that you have called on at a particular time to help you. So they change throughout your life as you ascend, as you get to new higher levels within your own ascension. That's when higher beings will start to come through from higher lifetimes. But the mitra beings that I mentioned with my client, these beings are now what we would call evil. Very, very ugly looking, I might add, and can be described as tall greys with like really sort of prominent wrinkles in the middle of their forehead. Now, if you've ever seen the movie, it's like a 80s movie, but it's based on a true story. It's called Fire in the Sky. And they look identical to the aliens in that movie, which is actually, as I said, based on a true story. Now, these beings were once like all beings. They started out in the light, but collectively chose to regress and allow this AI to take over. That's how the AI was allowed onto the planet in the first place. Collectively, they had called it in. So ever since, these mitra beings, they've become soulless, disconnected from Earth, and act essentially like androids working for this AI. Now, I've got quite an interesting experience with these mitra beings. It's quite a story, if you'd like me to continue.
Yes, I feel like we're in like story time or something. It's so intrigued. I'm like, just keep talking.
Like, do I
This is so interesting. You should
It's
write a
so
book
cool.
or something on this. This is so cool.
Yeah, and like it's all resonating too. Like I keep getting like full body chills as you're talking. So something is like resonating as you speak. It's really cool. Continue, please.
Well, I mentioned earlier that I'm here to anchor in unity consciousness. And so because of this, one of my biggest lessons to overcome was this whole dark versus light narrative, good versus bad. You know, I've always grown up quite black and white with that. And so in having this belief of good versus bad, I was actually creating more duality within me. So how could I possibly anchor in unity consciousness when within me I've got this belief of good versus bad? So it's been one of the most hardest, challenging lessons that I've mastered, you know, especially when you consider what I've mentioned about child sex trafficking, you know, so it's very hard to overcome. And I do find it hard to accept total oneness sometimes, but that's the human in me. But at 3 years old, I discovered I was abducted. Okay, I was taken by the mitra beings. And I was taken from my bedroom, but my Andromedan family took my soul, took my spirit out of my body, so I couldn't experience what was going on. Mm-hmm. I knew that or later found out, however, that I was prodded about, particularly around up the nose and the brain area. And yeah, it wasn't very nice. I returned to my bed and never taken again, though, or I haven't at least tuned in to being taken again. But when my soul returned to my body, I was really uncomfortable. I was in pain. I remember my mum telling me that I was screaming every night for years, all the time when I went to bed. And I actually grew up with quite significant sinus problems as well. And in my early 20s, I had to have my nose sort of scalded and burnt on the inside to create space for me to breathe, as my airways had closed up due to trauma and inflammation in the area as a child. So yeah, fast forward to 2020, and I decided to go deep into past life regression and find out what they had done. And so I didn't get much information from that, though, because my Andromedan soul family took me away from the experience. So I didn't fully understand what had happened. But that night I went to bed, and as soon as I closed my eyes, there was one of these ugly mitras sitting on my bed, grabbing my left hand, trying to take me away. And this was 2 years ago. It was the most frightening experience anyone could ever go through. I was frozen with fear. I couldn't speak. I had no voice, but eventually I managed to scream and get him to leave. And honestly, for days after, I was too scared to sleep. I was literally drinking coffee at night to try and stay awake. I was so scared. Now they're about 5'5" as well. They're not the typical small greys that people have been shown. Pretty average height, wrinkly foreheads, and just small black eyes, but very emotionless, like clones, like just totally emotionless. But that is where the healing and that whole life lesson begins, because at that point I was ready to begin fully anchoring in this higher consciousness. And so in my dream state, these beings started to come through every few nights, and each time I was frozen with fear. It was so scary, but little by little over time I was able to be in the same room, and then I was able to tell them off, tell them to stay away. And then I was able to have them walking around me and next to me, being able to sort of cohabit, be around them. Yeah. But I'd learned that they actually weren't micro beings at all, but were in fact my own soul family in disguise. They were wearing costumes. That the abduction that I experienced at the age of 3, it wasn't the mitras, but were in fact my own soul family. Cheers. For the higher purpose of being able to heal that whole dark versus light and bring in that total oneness. That there really isn't any evil beings out there, because everything comes from source, which is total oneness. So it's all of the light. So once I was able to integrate that oneness within myself, I was then able to start calling it into the earth. So that's not to say that there isn't any evil in the world. There is. We are very much living in a spiritual war and have been for millions of years. But it's now, I guess, time to rise above that polarity and start healing and bringing together our own inner light, and on an individual level, because it's when we've reached that unity consciousness within that we can reach it without as well. And that's how we get rid of these, get rid of the regressive races, get rid of the bad guys, you know. And everything that is happening in the physical, it must first be created within the body and mind. So I ultimately, before I incarnated, asked my own soul family to disguise themselves as those beings, do all of that to me, so that I could go on this huge journey of unity consciousness. And so that's where I am here and now.
Yeah, like that was truly part of your contract before you came here, hey? And like, obviously, I'm guessing you believe in that, like that you kind of set your mission up before you arrived here in this body at this time. And what's your take on that?
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes I wish I could have tweaked a few things, you know, like living in a huge house. But it's all a journey of evolution. You choose, before you incarnate, you choose the experiences that you go through. You choose what's going to happen to you. You choose your family that you're going to be born into. You choose absolutely everything, but it's your time on earth that you have the free will to make the choices in that moment. But ultimately, you've already decided what you're going to do beforehand. And on earth, if there are things that you have agreed to do, you've contracted and you've set out to do, but in the lifetime you find that it's not actually working, then your higher self will create that. So for example, you could be working in a career and you could be really good at it for your, you know, for most of your life, but then it'll come to a point where your higher self will be like, nope, we're going to give them the tower card moment, because they're not supposed to be doing that. So, and that's where their whole sort of physical life will start to fall apart, or seemingly fall apart, but it's actually creating space for what it is that they set out to achieve beforehand.
Our lives right now. No, but kind of. That's why we were doing this podcast. Is yeah, some things happened in our lives a couple of years ago that, you know, kind of led us onto this journey that we're on, and now we're talking to really cool people like you and learning some really cool things. So hopefully we can figure out exactly what our paths are. But yeah, I was nursing before this and not exactly doing that anymore. So yeah, but very interesting. For I guess I have a question, just a pretty simple question, but maybe for just our listeners. So how are when we experience dreams, and how are those connected to our past lives? Or I guess like I'm trying to get at like what is the dream state that we're in? Can you just talk a little bit maybe how those two are related, if they are related?
Yeah,
Because it sounds
definitely.
like that's how a lot of your experiences have kind of come through.
Definitely. So I've had many experiences through meditation and going into past lives, but then
Mhm.
I've had some really powerful lifetimes that have come through where my conscious mind wouldn't have been able to register it. So in the dream state, your conscious mind is asleep. And so
Mhm.
you're able to really sort of bring through that higher perspective, that higher learning, your higher self's able to come through. So much information has come through in the dream state, but it was a gift that was fully activated when I experienced past life regression myself, and then went on this journey to become a past life regression practitioner and now teach it to others as well. So
Mhm.
I mean, that's just my gift, but honestly, the people that I work with, their dreams are being activated. The more people that I speak with, they're remembering their dreams, and so much information is coming through in the dream state. There'll be dreams where you'll wake up and you'll just know that you're connecting into a memory.
Mhm.
Oh, I can share with you actually. I used to, when I was younger, I honestly, it was only about a year ago I realized, but I swear my dad and I used to watch this sort of sci-fi TV show when I was a kid, and it was connected into child trafficking. And I remember watching this scene where the boy and a girl, were up in the attic watching their parents at the front door being taken away by these robots with crosses in their eyes. And I went through every single sci-fi show trying to figure out what it was, like right from the 1980s to the present day, like all of these different sci-fi shows to try and think what it was. And I used to pester my dad non-stop to try and understand, like, what was it called, you know. Anyway, in my dream state, I connected into what it was that I was remembering. And it wasn't a TV show, it was actually a memory from another lifetime, but had been coming through in the dream state. But when I was a child, thought that I was actually watching a TV show, but it wasn't, it was in the dreams. And it was activating this remembrance of bringing truth to the child, that the taking of children. So I had to continue to have that sort of memory coming up subconsciously to bring awareness to it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. We've had a couple people on that talk about dream states, so I was just curious as to kind of
Oh,
your take on it. The other question I did have too is obviously you're talking about a couple of your past lives, and like I guess some of the themes for kind of humanity and evolution and kind of where we're at today with certain events and things that have happened. Obviously we've all lived many and very different past lives, but have you noticed a kind of a common theme over from like with clients over the last few years in regards to kind of what's going on now? Like, do you see similar, like different events, but kind of a similar overall theme in regards to kind of what's happening right now?
definitely. So prior to 2020, a lot of my clients were people that needed healing,
Mm-hmm.
and people that had physical sort of pain and disease that wanted to understand more about it and to clear it. Now, since 2020, I've had so many people coming to me saying they're hearing this term starseed thrown about. They have no belonging. They don't fit in anywhere. They have this connection to the stars. They're fascinated by different sort of galactic beings and want to know more about them. Now, those are the sessions that are really powerful, because it's those sorts of people that I'm here to work with and it's to activate their own gifts within, activate their own psychic abilities, so that they can really start to hone in on those skills and break away from the matrix.
Right.
Because yeah, I find that when you get to like, everyone has an activation year. You know, you'll be working a normal job, like when you've mentioned about being a nurse, and then bam, all of a sudden tower card moment, and you're having to, you know, go on this huge sort of journey of self-discovery and learn who you are from scratch. And yeah, so since 2020, the sorts of people that are coming to me are those star seeds that are being activated and really working to call in that higher energy into the earth. It's happening more quickly than ever before. And I also find that the clients that are coming to me these days are young. Like, I'm talking 18, 19 years old, early 20s. Now, beforehand, it was people in their 50s, you know, those sort of the first wavers, the first wave of volunteers. And now it's these new sort of crystal children that are being born that have no karma to clear. They don't have these sorts of life lessons that other star seeds have had to go through. They've got it easy, you know. And those are the ones that we really want to protect and start to fully sort of activate. So yeah, I find that the clientele that are coming are more and more young.
Very interesting. I guess it kind of makes sense. I think we've talked about it before with other people or amongst each other, but I'm like, maybe I was really in the dark up until like a few years ago, but I feel like it just wasn't like all of this, you know, spirituality and all this stuff wasn't, maybe I was really in the dark, but it didn't seem like it was as popular as maybe it is becoming now. Obviously, way more people are waking up. So it's really interesting that you have noticed that too, which was why I wanted to ask it, because I think I ask a lot of people that just out of curiosity, but it's getting the same answer all the time. So that's good and exciting.
Honestly, it's so cool because before 2020, I was very much on my own, and I was still trying to fit into an ill society. I've never been able to fit in, and it's because I'm here to create a new earth. I'm not here to fit into the old one. But you know, being a human, you do want to fit in. You know, you want to be like everyone else, or at least that was what I used to believe. And so prior to 2020, I could not have this conversation with anyone. I couldn't tell anyone anything, not even my own family, because, you know, they all think you're a weirdo, you know, and you need help. But honestly, the people that I speak to now, they were so close-minded before, and it's just like all of a sudden they've woken up overnight, and it's just like this shield or this dark cloud has just been lifted. That's why I call it the Great Awakening rather than COVID, because it's exactly what's happened. So many sort of one-track minded people, I guess, have awakened. And it's beautiful to see. Like, it's so cool to be having these conversations with everyday people, you know.
Totally. And COVID's like the one thing too, I feel like I guess lately, the last few years, that everyone in the world is talking about the same thing, right? And, you know, we're having these conversations. We're in Canada, you're in Australia, you know, we are talking to people in Europe, the States. It's kind of, you know, you're talking about the oneness and everything, but yeah, it's crazy that something happened that the entire world has been talking about, and now it's shifting in a way that we're kind of all, well, not all, but a lot of us are getting to be on the same page, which is, it doesn't matter where we are in the world, we're all connecting on similar things that, like you said before, people wouldn't talk about. So yeah.
You know, earlier on in the year, I had surgery on my little finger, which hasn't completely fixed, as you can see. It's just good. I've just given up. But when I went to have surgery, I opted just to have a local anesthetic so that I could stay awake throughout. And the nurse said to me, "Oh, why have you chosen that?" And I said, "Because I've got clients tomorrow and I don't want it to affect my third eye." You know, I just came out with it, and I thought, oh, she's going to think I'm weird, but then I just don't really care. But then she said to me, Wow, that is so beautiful to see. She said, I'm actually
Aw.
recovering. Yeah, she said, I'm actually recovering from cancer myself. And it has just been beautiful to see more and more people like yourself that are awakening to a higher power, to something greater within. She's like, I keep seeing like butterflies everywhere. And I know that it's because I'm recovering from something that's quite dark that's happened. And now I'm transforming. It's like a new era that I'm starting, or a new phase in my life. So she was like, I'll look after you, you know. And I thought,
Aw.
what the
Aw.
hell? Like, this is just like, this is a nurse. This is after COVID. So, and at the, earlier on in the year, it was still very much, everyone would ask, are you vaccinated? Or you can't be allowed in certain places without it, so I was blown away, and then I thought, well, that's it. As soon as you speak your truth, you're going to have people that are on that wavelength that are going to come into your life, so yeah, that it's just beautiful to see.
Yeah, we all got to start stepping out of that spiritual closet. Amazing. Well, I mean, I think we could honestly talk to you for hours and days and weeks, but we can't. So we might have to have you back at a different time. But we'd love to just to share with us and our listeners just a little bit about the services you offer, and kind of everything you offer for your clients and potential clients.
Sure. So, of course, I take people into their past lives through hypnosis. It's a technique that I've created. It's called the iHEAL technique. And I also teach people to become practitioners myself as well. So, yeah, it's all online through my website. You can find me at www.elliegarnham.com.au. But yeah, I take people into past lives. I offer energy healings, and I also, it was a service that got channeled into me a few days ago, actually, was to go straight into connecting people into their own galactic families and soul groups, where they can activate their psychic gifts straight away as well. So there's 3 sorts of different levels to the services that I offer, but it can all be found on my website.
Amazing. And what is your website again? We'll put it in the show notes, but just for anyone listening that is eager to search up your website and all those services.
So it's www.elliegarnham.com.au, and Ellie is Ellie, and Garnham, which is a bit of a confusing surname. It's Garnham for mother.
Perfect. Yeah, that's like just such incredible offerings, and you have so much to share that definitely we would love to talk to you again and share more of this information with our listeners. And do you have any kind of like final things you do want to share here today, Ellie, before we close off?
Well, it really is to do the inner work. And I know that that is regurgitated information that everyone hears. Do the inner work, and it's so annoying hearing it. But honestly, once you start just tapping into yourself a bit more, realizing that you have the power to, you literally create your own reality. And you have the power to change it as well. No one else is going to do it for you. So start tapping in, start connecting to yourself fully, start going on that journey of self-discovery, and who knows where you'll end up, but you'll be living in your highest timeline.
Amazing. Oh, this was so like honestly enlightening and interesting. We haven't had anyone on here quite like you or the work that you do. So this was really, really fun for us. Thank you again so much for coming on and sharing all your stories and gifts with us in the world. And hopefully, yeah, soon this world can be more of a light filled place. I don't know. It's been a long couple of years, but people like you out there, it's nice to know you guys are out there and helping so many people. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. And both of you as well, like the service that you do, you're getting people out there. So, like you said, when you was a nurse as well, like that's being of service to others, so you've always had it in you. But people like me just activate that within others as well. So I could honestly talk, I've got millions of past lives that I could share with you as well. So I could literally go on forever.
Yeah, we would love to chat about more of those. And I think like the other thing is to just encourage our listeners, if they've been thinking about it, to reach out to someone, to Ellie or to somebody else that you know, if you are thinking about doing a past life regression, because they are such an amazing tool to help either with healing or ascension or kind of all of these things that we were talking about today. So I would highly recommend that if it's something you're on the fence about as well.
If it can change my life, and if you are guided to it, there is a reason for it. There is a reason for it. If you've never been able to fit into society, it's because you're here to create a new one. And what can happen in a past life session, it can literally transform you. It can change you from that single session. Change your life.
Thank you for listening to the Soul Connection Duo podcast. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Your support for our podcast helps us to grow our amazing community and allows us to create new and exciting episodes each month. Please leave us a rating and review on your favorite listening platform, and be sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram for new content, updates, and more.